Welcome to FPL Differential XI, a series where we pick a team of 11 lowly owned players who we predict will score the most points for the upcoming game week, to assist you in gaining substantial rank over other fantasy managers. There's just 3 rules. The squad must be worth a maximum of 82.5 mil to allow for 17.5 mil to be spent on the bench. Each player must be owned by no more than 10% of total players, and we're only allowed to pick a maximum of 3 players from a single team. A silhouette of each player we've selected is already on the pitch, so feel free to play along by seeing how many of the 11 you can correctly guess. In goal, I've gone for Kepa Arrizabalaga for the home game against Bournemouth. Currently he's owned by just 2.1% of players. However, this ownership is likely to become much higher by the start of Gameweek 17, especially by active fantasy managers. After time off training with Potter, I expect Chelsea to return defensively more solid, and this looks to be a great fixture from a defensive point of view on paper. First up in defence is Zinchenko for Arsenal's home match versus West Ham. Arsenal have been one of the best defences in the league so far this season, and West Ham's attacking numbers have been relatively poor. I've heard many fantasy managers discuss the likes of Gabriel, Saliba and White. However, we shouldn't forget just how well Zinchenko started the season. Arsenal will have to put out their strongest team to remain top of the table, and I believe that means Zinchenko plays at left back. Next up is Sessegnon away to Brentford. Sessegnon started the season well, and with Croatia performing exceptionally well in the World Cup, it could be that Spurs have to rest Perisic for their first game back in Gameweek 17. This leaves the left wing-back spot open for Sessegnon. Brentford away is a game that I can see going either way, but I just think Spurs wing-back options offer a possible route to points. Finally, in the 3-man defence is Andy Robertson for Liverpool's away match versus Aston Villa. This is another tough game to call, as I highly expect Villa to come back out performing well following the break. However, Robertson's appeal really is his attacking threat with corners and multiple crosses throughout a game. A clean sheet would be a bonus in this one. First up in midfield is Son for the Brentford match. It's an uncertainty which 2 players Conte decides to play alongside Harry Kane, but I feel like he's going to need Son to start performing well over the Christmas period to allow Tottenham to remain in the top 4. Although Son has started the season relatively poor, I still believe he's Spurs' best attacker along with Kane, and Conte will most likely want the 2 performing well alongside one another. Joining him is Mason Mount for the home match against Bournemouth. This is a game I can see Chelsea playing well in, and the biggest issue for us fantasy managers is selecting players who Potter is definitely going to play. I believe that Mount is most likely top of his list of starters. He's a player who links up a lot of Chelsea's attacking play, and I wouldn't be surprised to see either assists or goals from him in this match. Next up is Bruno Fernandes for Man United. With one of the most favourable fixtures in Gameweek 17 at home to Forest, I can see Man United scoring multiple goals in this game. Some of you may remember just how prolific Fernandes was as a fantasy asset before Ronaldo joined United, and now that he's left, there could be a chance for Fernandes to re-establish his previous form. At just 2.2% owned, he's a massive differential that could gain you massive rank over the rest of the game. Finally, in the 4-man midfield is Kulusevski for Tottenham. Having had a break over the whole World Cup and performing well prior to Gameweek 17, it seems that Kulu could be a great differential for this week. At the end of last season, Spurs were scoring 4 to 5 goals in multiple games with a front 3 of Kane, Son and Kulusevski, and it will be interesting to see whether Conte decides on starting that trio again in Gameweek 17. Up front to begin with, I've gone for Eddie Nketiah versus West Ham. After hearing about the unfortunate news that Jesus may be out for a few months, it's likely that Nketiah fills in that number 9 spot. Although Jesus' absence might weaken Arsenal in attack a considerable amount, we can't forget just how well Nketiah performed towards the end of last season. If he can start to replicate that form, he could be a great option moving forwards. Joining him is Anthony Martial for Man United's home game against Nottingham Forest. Now that Ronaldo has gone, Martial should fill in as the main man up front for United. The fact that he's likely to be on penalties and has loads of creative players behind him makes him a really interesting choice, and at only 2% owned, he could be a great differential. Finally, to make up the 11 is Che Adams for Southampton. Although the Saints haven't been performing well this season, they did appoint Nathan Jones as their new manager just before the break. The likelihood is that they're going to have to attack more to get some wins on the board, and I believe Adams is their best route to goals. This is a bit of an out there pick that could definitely go either way. A massive congrats to this week's king of the channel for correctly predicting the score of last week's differential 11. If you want to be in with a chance of winning a shout out on the channel, correctly predict the points total of this week's differential 11. Info will be down below in the pinned comment. Thanks for joining us on this week's video. Make sure to subscribe and ring the bell to avoid missing the next one, and I wish you all massive green arrows for the upcoming game week.